The jet bridge hummed with the steady vibration of the airplane's engines, a low mechanical growl blending with the quiet murmur of passengers waiting in line. Boarding passes were clutched tightly in nervous hands. Sunlight spilled through the narrow windows, cutting across the metallic corridor in sharp streaks that reflected off the polished floor and the silver edge of the airplane's doorframe. A faint scent of coffee mixed with the tang of jet fuel. Somewhere behind the low buzz of conversation, the squeak of a trolley wheel echoed softly. Mark adjusted his uniform, crisp white shirt, perfectly straight black tie, and captain's epaulets gleaming under the harsh light. At 38, tall and solidly built, he was a man used to control. Control that today was about to be tested far beyond the ordinary. From the end of the bridge came the first sharp crack of chaos. A voice high-pitched and furious sliced through the calm like a blade. "This is ridiculous. I'm not waiting. I paid for first class and I will not be delayed by anyone." A heavy-set woman in her 40s, her blonde hair pulled back carelessly, waved her arms in outrage. Her floral blouse clashed violently with beige pants as if her outfit reflected her mood, loud and unapologetic. Passengers turned. A low wave of murmurs rose into shocked whispers. Phones flickered on as people began recording. Dozens of cameras now pointed in her direction. Mark's eyes narrowed slightly. He didn't yet know her name, Kathy, but he understood her type immediately. Loud, entitled, certain the rules didn't apply to her. She pointed at the airplane door as though it were a weapon, her voice echoing down the jet bridge. The air felt suddenly smaller, heavier, thick with tension. Everyone could sense it. This wasn't just a boarding delay. It was about to become a full-blown confrontation. Mark stepped forward, calm and steady, letting his presence speak before his words did. "Ma'am, please. Boarding will proceed in the listed order. Everyone will get to their seats safely." His voice carried quiet authority, the kind shaped by thousands of flights, confident but never confrontational. He raised one hand, palm open, a gesture that could mean either welcome or warning. His expression stayed neutral, unreadable, though inside he could already feel the tension rising. He knew the rules, he respected procedure, and he understood that some people needed reminders of both, whether they liked it or not. Kathy's response came fast and loud. She stepped forward, ignoring the boundary of personal space, her face flushed red, eyes blazing. "Excuse me, young man," she snapped. "I don't care about your rules. I am not waiting like some commoner. First class means first on the plane. Do you understand me?" Her finger jabbed toward his chest. Behind her, passengers shifted uncomfortably, some looking away, others glued to the drama unfolding. Phones continued to record, the hum of digital clicks blending with the tension in the air. Mark took a slow breath, silently counting to 3 before replying. "Ma'am, I understand your frustration, but the boarding process isn't negotiable. Your turn will come. It's important for everyone's safety and schedule that we follow procedure." His tone left no room for argument, yet it was calm and steady, firm without being unkind. Years of experience had taught him that patience and strategy always outweighed aggression. Kathy scoffed, stepping back just enough to throw her arms dramatically. "Patience, safety? You think that little uniform scares me? I've flown all over the world and no one has ever told me I couldn't board first." Her voice grew louder, bouncing off the metal walls. Some passengers flinched. Others exchanged glances of disbelief. A few whispered, torn between sympathy and annoyance. Most simply kept recording, knowing this was the kind of moment that went viral. Mark's mind raced. Diplomacy wasn't working, and he couldn't risk escalating the situation. He sensed that Kathy's anger wasn't just arrogance, it was habit, a kind of shield built from entitlement, one that logic alone wouldn't break. He needed to diffuse her temper while keeping control. Every second mattered. The tension thickened. Her shouting had reached its peak. Behind her, a young couple held their child close, eyes darting nervously toward the pilot. The passengers waited, silently hoping order would return. Mark straightened his posture, giving a subtle nod to the flight attendants, a signal that he had things under control. The smallest details mattered now. His words, his timing, even his tone. Then when the tension felt ready to snap, he did something unexpected. He met Kathy's eyes with calm steadiness, the faintest trace of a smile forming at the corner of his mouth. "Ma'am," he said softly, "please wait. Your turn is coming." There was no sarcasm, no anger, only quiet certainty. Kathy froze mid-motion, her hand suspended in the air as if the atmosphere itself had solidified around her. The hum of the engines grew louder. Sunlight sliced the jet bridge sharply, reflecting off the silver walls. Every passenger leaned forward slightly, breath held, phones still raised. Something was about to change. Kathy's lips trembled, her eyes narrowing with fury. And in that stillness, for the first time, she realized she was no longer in control, yet she found herself frozen, trapped in a moment she never saw coming. Mark stood calm and steady, the pillar of control in a storm of entitlement and chaos. It was a quiet standoff, charged with tension, each second stretching long and heavy with suspense. Behind her, the boarding line shifted, impatient, uneasy, but no one dared move. The entire jet bridge felt as if it were holding its breath, suspended in the grip of this confrontation. Mark knew this was only the beginning. Experience told him that Kathy's arrogance wouldn't bend easily. This situation would take more than words to resolve. The spark had been struck and the stage was set for the drama to unfold. Kathy's scowl deepened, color rising in her cheeks. She planted herself firmly in front of the airplane door, hands cutting sharply through the air as her voice grew louder. "Do you know who I am? Do you know how much I paid for this flight? I don't care about your boarding order, I demand to go first." Her words bounced off the metal walls, echoing through the bridge like ricochets. Passengers shuffled nervously, some whispering, others recording every word. The tension was thick enough to feel, every eye glued to the unfolding scene. Mark's jaw tightened slightly, though his expression remained composed. Years in the cockpit had trained him for calm under pressure. Emergencies, turbulence, conflict. He knew restraint was power. He watched her carefully, reading the details most would miss. The tremor in her hands, the quick, shallow breaths, the darting eyes searching for validation. This wasn't just about boarding. It was about control, pride, and the desperate need to dominate what she couldn't command. "Ma'am," he said evenly, "please step aside and wait your turn. Everyone will be seated safely, and we need to maintain order for the benefit of all passengers." His voice was calm, clear, and deliberate, a tone that stood in stark contrast to her rising hysteria. It was firm enough to reassert authority, but never aggressive. Kathy laughed sharply, a sound that grated through the confined space. "Logic, order? You think those words matter to me? I'm not a commoner. I paid for first-class privileges, and I won't be treated like everyone else." She leaned forward, so close to the door it looked as if she could force her way in through sheer willpower. A flight attendant approached carefully, but Mark lifted a hand, signaling them to stay back. Not yet. This was his moment to handle. Passengers whispered among themselves, their voices blending into a low hum of unease and anticipation. A few tried to reason with her, gently suggesting she wait her turn, but she brushed them off with a dismissive wave. Her entitlement filled the air like static, amplifying every ounce of discomfort in the space. Mark could feel the pressure mounting. This wasn't just a disruption anymore. It was threatening the flight schedule, the safety protocol, and the fragile calm of the passengers. Kathy was gaining momentum, and if he didn't act soon, chaos would follow. But confrontation wouldn't work. Not with her. Not yet. Mark shifted his stance slightly, positioning himself between Kathy and the airplane door. It was a small movement, but it placed him firmly in control of the space, an unspoken reminder of who truly commanded this environment. "Ma'am," he said, his voice low but unyielding, "the boarding process is fixed. You will board according to your group. Trying to bypass that won't change the outcome." His tone was a balance of professionalism and quiet strength, enough to assert dominance without fueling her anger. He couldn't afford to lose patience. Yielding would only encourage her. Rules had to stand, Kathy sneered, her eyes flashing. "You're bluffing. You think that little uniform and a few rules can stop me? People like me don't wait." She spun toward the line of passengers, perhaps hoping for allies, but found only hesitant stares and a wall of silent phones recording every second. Each quiet beep and flash added weight to the moment. Mark recognized it instantly. This wasn't just a confrontation anymore, it was theater. And the passengers were his audience. A subtle plan began forming in his mind. Kathy thrived on attention, on being seen and heard. If he could use that against her, let her think she was winning. He could guide the situation toward resolution without losing control. He glanced at the flight attendants and gave a small, precise nod. They understood. This wasn't about overpowering her. It was about patience, timing, and knowing exactly when to turn the tide. They would let Kathy's arrogance set the pace, then use it against her at the perfect moment. Mark's plan demanded precision, patience, and a sharp understanding of human behavior. Her entitlement was both her greatest weapon and her inevitable weakness. Unaware of the subtle shift in control, Kathy continued her tirade. She stomped her foot, gesturing wildly, her voice climbing into a near scream. "I demand to board now. You can't make me wait, this is ridiculous." Passengers flinched at the volume. Yet many couldn't look away. Some recorded quietly, others whispered, torn between anxiety and disbelief. The tension was so thick it felt as if the metal walls themselves were vibrating with it. Mark remained calm, his composure the steady counterweight to her storm. He knew the crescendo was coming, that breaking point where her arrogance would turn into her downfall. He would guide her there carefully and deliberately. A small, almost hidden smile flickered across his face, the first hint that the tide was shifting in his favor. When he spoke again, his voice carried quiet finality. "Ma'am, please wait. Your turn will come." There was no challenge in his tone, no hint of anger, only an unwavering confidence that filled the space with authority. Kathy froze mid-yell, her words faltering. Her gestures slowed just slightly as confusion flickered across her face. Passengers leaned in, sensing a change in the energy, something subtle but powerful. She looked around, searching for support, but found none. The anger remained, but beneath it was a growing edge of uncertainty. The hum of the engines outside became a steady undertone to the silence. Mark held her gaze, calm and unmoving. The passengers watched, phones raised, breaths held, as if the entire standoff balanced on the razor edge between arrogance and authority. The jet bridge pulsed with anticipation. Every look, every breath, every movement felt charged with suspense. Kathy's fury had filled the space, but it was beginning to collapse under its own weight. Mark knew the moment to act decisively was coming, and when it did, the outcome would be undeniable. He stood still, letting silence work for him. The audience, the passengers, the crew, the cameras, all felt it too. The air was alive with tension, but the balance was quietly tipping toward justice. Kathy's face burned red, strands of hair falling loose from her bun. Her earlier bravado was faltering. The confidence that once fueled her now trembled in frustration. Mark stood motionless at the doorway, arms at his sides, posture straight, expression calm. His quiet authority filled the jet bridge, unshaken by her noise. Every few seconds, his eyes flicked to the line of passengers, all silently rooting for him to restore order. Phones hovered mid-air, capturing every second. The soft chime of notifications punctuated the tension like a faint soundtrack to her unraveling. Her voice, once sharp and commanding, now carried an edge of desperation. "You can't do this. I paid for first-class privileges. Do you even know who I am?" I will not be ignored. But her words, though loud, seemed to echo hollowly against the calm around her. The crowd's silent focus had shifted, the power dynamic reversed. She was no longer the one commanding attention. She had become the spectacle. Her arrogance had turned her into the antagonist of her own story. She jabbed a finger toward the door again, as if anger alone could bend the rules to her will. Mark raised one hand slightly, a signal to the crew to hold their positions. He was in control and everyone knew it. When he spoke, his voice was quiet but firm. "Ma'am, the boarding order is fixed. Trying to bypass it will not change the outcome. Please wait your turn." The words were simple, almost ordinary, but the calm authority behind them hit harder than any argument. Kathy blinked, momentarily thrown off balance. For the first time, a flicker of doubt crossed her face. She shifted her stance, pride battling against the creeping awareness that she was losing. The flight attendants moved subtly, guiding passengers quietly around her, letting the line advance. It was done with such precision that Kathy didn't realize what was happening until it was too late. Mark's strategy was in motion. Let her feel the eyes, the quiet judgment, the weight of public scrutiny. Each passenger who passed her was another reminder that she had lost control. And slowly, she began to understand the audience, the phones, the whispers. None of it belonged to her anymore. Her spotlight had turned against her. Her arrogance, the very shield that had fueled her aggression, had now become the cause of her downfall. Kathy's voice rose again, but this time it carried a note of panic. "This is harassment. I demand a manager. I demand compensation. You can't treat people this way," she shouted, her words tumbling out faster than her thoughts could catch them. She was unraveling, her once carefully constructed image of control crumbling before everyone's eyes. Passengers whispered among themselves. A few even chuckled quietly. Others murmured reassurances, confident that order would soon be restored. Mark kept his tone calm and measured, his patience contrasting sharply with her growing desperation. His voice was low but steady, each word deliberate as if spoken through a lens of composure that made her fury look smaller by the second. "Your turn will come, ma'am." "Please wait," he said once more. Every repetition struck gently like a hammer shaping steel, firm, unyielding, and certain. Then came the moment of subtle brilliance. Mark gave a discreet nod to a nearby flight attendant who approached the boarding door with a clipboard and announced clearly, "Special assistance boarding for Group 12, please stand by." Kathy froze. Her eyes widened, misinterpreting the announcement as her chance to cut the line. She stepped forward, eager to reclaim control, but Mark was ready. "Ma'am," he said politely, "please remain where you are. The line must proceed in order." The polite firmness in his tone carried more power than any argument could. The passengers, still recording, exchanged glances. The tension shifted. The very audience Kathy had tried to command was now silently cheering for her downfall. Her confusion turned to frustration. Her gestures became clumsy, her words less sharp. Her shouts, once commanding, now sounded desperate. Pleas from someone realizing she was no longer the center of control. Phones caught every moment. The once sympathetic glances now turned judgmental. Clips began uploading live, spreading her tantrum in real time. Her imagined authority was dissolving, replaced by a portrait of public humiliation. Mark watched quietly. Every movement was calculated, patient, deliberate. He allowed her meltdown to reach its peak, knowing that once her rage collapsed under its own weight, silence would finish what words could not. The line continued to move forward, passengers walking past her with small, knowing smiles. Each step they took deepened her isolation. Kathy finally understood. Her arrogance hadn't changed the rules. It had only exposed her. The moment her pride broke was unmistakable. Her shoulders sank. Her voice faltered mid-sentence. She covered her mouth with trembling fingers as the final passengers passed by. The jet bridge fell silent. Only the soft hum of engines and the click of heels echoed through the air. When Kathy finally boarded, last in line, her face was flushed with humiliation. Passengers watched quietly, phones lowered now, their eyes reflecting both pity and satisfaction. Mark gave a polite nod. Nothing more. Words were unnecessary. The message was clear. Arrogance has consequences, and respect for others always wins in the end. As she walked past him, defeated and silent, Mark turned toward the cockpit. The confrontation was over. The tension lifted. Passengers exchanged whispers of relief and amusement, a shared quiet sense that justice had been served. Kathy's public embarrassment would follow her long after the flight ended. Her once proud image was now tainted by the very behavior she thought would protect her. Mark settled into the cockpit, closing the door softly behind him. The engines hummed, the cabin lights glowed, and calm finally returned. Somewhere in the back of the plane, Kathy sat stiffly in her seat, her face still flushed with embarrassment. And though she said nothing, Mark knew the lesson had landed, loud and clear. As the plane rolled toward the runway, he allowed himself a faint smile. The order had been restored, the rules upheld, and arrogance once again had been grounded.